License and registration, now. Officer Ryan Martinez's voice cut through the night air like a blade, his flashlight beam piercing through the driver's side window of the pristine white Mercedes S-Class. Behind the wheel, Dr. Marcus Thompson slowly reached toward his glove compartment, his movements deliberate and careful. The blue and red lights painted the hospital parking lot in strobing shadows, creating an otherworldly scene of authority versus dignity. 11:47 p.m., end of another 14-hour shift saving lives. Beginning of a nightmare that would change everything forever. Have you ever been judged by your appearance rather than your character, even when you held the power to save the very people judging you? 2 minutes until the emergency trauma alert sounds. 2 minutes until hospital director Thompson is needed for a life or death surgery that only his skilled hands could perform. But Officer Martinez doesn't know that yet. He sees only what his prejudice allows him to see. The November air carried the scent of rain and antiseptic from the nearby emergency department. Dr. Thompson had just finished his third consecutive heart surgery of the evening, each procedure saving a life that might otherwise have been lost. His surgical scrubs, wrinkled from hours of precise work, bore the invisible weight of responsibility that came with being one of the nation's most skilled cardiothoracic surgeons. The Mercedes S-Class, a gift to himself after completing his fellowship at Johns Hopkins, represented years of sacrifice, study, and determination to excel in a field where men who looked like him were rare. "Step out of the vehicle," Martinez commanded, his hand resting on his holster with practiced authority. His 8 years on the force had taught him to spot inconsistencies, or so he believed. A young black man in scrubs driving a car worth more than most people's annual salary. The math didn't add up in his prejudiced mind. The expensive vehicle, the late hour, the medical clothing that could easily be stolen or purchased online. Every detail fed into assumptions that had been shaped by years of racial bias disguised as police intuition. Through the Mercedes' tinted windows, a medical bag sat visible on the passenger seat, its emergency medications barely visible beneath scattered surgical notes written in the precise handwriting that saved lives daily. The car's license plate read MD-Save1, a personalized registration that proclaimed its owner's profession to anyone who bothered to look closely. But Martinez saw only what his preconceptions allowed, filtering evidence through the lens of racial prejudice that made him dangerous to the community he'd sworn to serve. "This vehicle is worth $90,000, Martinez said, his voice loud enough to echo across the empty parking lot, ensuring that anyone within earshot would witness what he believed to be the apprehension of a car thief. "How exactly did you come to possess it, and don't give me some story about legitimate ownership. Young men like you don't drive cars like this unless something illegal is involved." Dr. Thompson's hands remained on the steering wheel, steady despite the exhaustion from performing 3 heart surgeries in one day, each operation requiring the kind of precision and endurance that most people couldn't comprehend. His years of medical training had taught him to remain calm under pressure, to think clearly when lives hung in the balance, to maintain composure even when faced with life and death decisions. But nothing in medical school had prepared him for being treated like a criminal while wearing the scrubs that symbolized his dedication to healing. "Officer, I can explain everything," Dr. Thompson said, his voice carrying the calm authority he used when delivering life-changing diagnoses to families in crisis. "I'm Dr. Marcus Thompson, Chief of Cardiothoracic Surgery at Memorial Hospital. I just finished my shift and I'm heading home after saving 3 lives tonight. This vehicle is registered in my name, and I have all the documentation to prove legitimate ownership." "Sure you are," Martinez scoffed, circling the Mercedes like a predator studying prey, his flashlight beams searching for any evidence that would support his assumptions. "And I'm the chief of police. Let's start with the truth about how you stole this car. Did you take it from a hospital parking garage, rob someone at gunpoint? Use fake medical credentials to gain access to restricted areas?" The emergency trauma alert hadn't sounded yet, but Dr. Thompson's pager buzzed silently against his hip, the vibration carrying urgent significance that only medical professionals could understand. "Critical patient incoming. ETA 90 seconds. His surgical team was already prepping in Trauma Bay 1, waiting for their chief surgeon to arrive and take command of a situation that would determine whether a young man lived or died before morning. Behind the hospital's glass doors, Nurse Patricia Williams noticed the commotion in the parking lot, her 20 years of emergency room experience telling her something was terribly wrong. That was Dr. Thompson's car in his designated parking spot, and Dr. Thompson, who'd saved her grandson's life just 6 months ago during a complicated heart procedure that no other surgeon in the region could have performed. The same Dr. Thompson who worked Christmas holidays, stayed late for emergency cases, and never turned away a patient regardless of their ability to pay. "Officer, you're making a serious mistake," Dr. Thompson said, his voice carrying the calm authority he used when coordinating complex surgical procedures that required split-second timing and absolute precision. "Check your database. This vehicle is registered to Dr. Marcus Thompson, Chief of Surgery. The same Dr. Thompson whose picture is on the wall inside that hospital, whose medical license is a matter of public record, whose surgical skills have saved over 2,000 lives in this facility alone." Martinez's radio crackled with routine Saturday night calls from across the city. Bar fights that turned violent, domestic disturbances that required delicate handling, traffic violations that filled municipal coffers. Nothing as interesting as what he believed to be a potential luxury car theft by someone bold enough to wear surgical scrubs as a disguise, someone audacious enough to park at a hospital and claim medical credentials. "Turn around and place your hands on the hood," Martinez ordered, his voice carrying the arrogance of authority unchecked by wisdom or experience. "I'm going to search this vehicle for evidence of theft, drugs, weapons, or whatever other criminal activity you're involved in. Young black men don't legitimately own cars like this, and your story about being a doctor is the most ridiculous lie I've heard all week." The trauma alert sounded with piercing urgency that cut through the night air like a surgical scalpel. Code red, critical patient. "All hands to Trauma Bay 1. Through the hospital windows, the emergency team scrambled into position with practiced efficiency, but something was missing. Someone was missing. Dr. Sarah Chen, the resident surgeon, looked around frantically, her eyes searching for the one person whose expertise could save the incoming patient. Nurse Williams pushed through the hospital doors, her voice carrying across the parking lot with the authority of 2 decades spent in emergency medicine. "Officer, that man is Dr. Thompson. He's our chief of surgery. You're preventing him from saving a life." "Ma'am, step back," Martinez warned without taking his eyes off Dr. Thompson, his tunnel vision preventing him from recognizing the truth that everyone else could see clearly. "This is police business. I don't care what anyone claims. This man doesn't look like any doctor I've ever seen. Real doctors don't drive stolen luxury vehicles or work at this are wearing wrinkled scrubs." Inside the trauma bay, the critical patient arrived on a gurney surrounded by paramedics whose faces showed the gravity of the situation: gunshot wound to the chest, massive internal bleeding, multiple organ damage. Dr. Chen's hands shook as she realized the complexity of the surgery ahead, understanding that she was skilled but that this case required Dr. Thompson's expertise, his years of specialized training, his reputation for performing miracles when other surgeons gave up hope. "Officer Martinez," Dr. Thompson said, reading the name badge with deliberate precision, memorizing badge number 2847 for the formal complaint that would inevitably follow this encounter. "In approximately 60 seconds, a gunshot victim will die because you're preventing the only surgeon qualified to save him from entering that hospital. A young man will lose his life because of your prejudice and assumptions." Martinez laughed coldly, the sound carrying across the parking lot like breaking glass. "Nice try with a guilt trip. You're under arrest for vehicle theft, impersonating a medical professional, obstruction of justice, and whatever other charges I can think of. Your performance is convincing, but I've heard every lie in the book." The handcuffs emerged from Martinez's belt, their metal gleaming under the parking lot lights like instruments of injustice. Dr. Thompson's medical bag sat just feet away, containing medications and instruments that could save the dying patient upstairs, tools of healing that represented years of training and dedication to preserving life. His surgical skills, honed over 15 years of education and practice, were about to become irrelevant because of one officer's racial bias. Nurse Williams ran back inside, grabbing the first person she could find in the bustling emergency department. "Call Hospital Administrator Johnson, call the Chief of Staff, call the Mayor." Officer Martinez is arresting Dr. Thompson in the parking lot while a patient is dying upstairs. Through the Mercedes sunroof, Dr. Thompson's surgical loop caught the parking lot lights, the specialized magnification equipment worth $3,000 custom-fitted for the precise microsurgery he performed daily on hearts that other surgeons deemed inoperable. But Martinez saw only expensive accessories that didn't belong to someone he judged by appearance alone, someone whose success challenged his fundamental assumptions about race and achievement. "Officer, I'm going to reach for my hospital ID," Dr. Thompson announced, his movements deliberate and visible, following protocols designed to prevent escalation. "It's in my scrub pocket. You can watch my hands. You can supervise every movement, but that patient upstairs is going to die if you don't let me do my job." "Don't move," Martinez shouted, his hand moving to his weapon with the speed of someone whose training emphasized force over de-escalation. "Any sudden movements and you'll be face down on this pavement. I don't care about your fake ID or your fake medical emergency." The trauma patient flatlined for the first time, the steady beep of the heart monitor becoming the flat tone that struck fear into every medical professional's heart. Dr. Chen performed CPR with textbook precision, her voice cracking as she called for Dr. Thompson over the hospital's intercom system. "Code Blue, where is Dr. Thompson? We're losing him. We need the chief surgeon now." Hospital Administrator Rebecca Johnson burst through the emergency doors, her administrative authority clashing with police procedure in a confrontation that would define careers and save or cost lives. "Officer, you are interfering with critical medical operations. That man has saved over 2,000 lives in this hospital. He's the most respected surgeon on the West Coast." "Lady, I don't care if he claims to be the Surgeon General," Martinez replied, his arrogance fueled by years of unchecked authority and departmental policies that protected officers from accountability. "He's going to jail for grand theft auto, and your hospital can find another doctor to handle whatever fake emergency you're describing." Dr. Thompson's pager buzzed again with increasing urgency. "Patient critical, blood pressure dropping. Internal bleeding severe." His surgical team was doing everything they could with their considerable skills, but without their chief surgeon, the young man on the table had minutes to live before his injuries became irreversible and fatal. Through the hospital windows, the trauma team worked with desperate efficiency, their movements choreographed by years of training and experience. The patient was 19 years old, a college engineering student caught in gang crossfire while walking home from the library. His mother sat in the waiting room, praying for a miracle that only Dr. Thompson could provide, unaware that prejudice was preventing that miracle from happening. Martinez opened the Mercedes without permission, searching through the interior like a detective convinced of guilt before examining evidence. Medical journals with Dr. Thompson's name highlighted as author. Surgical notes written in the precise handwriting that coordinated life-saving procedures. Prescription pads bearing Dr. Thompson's name and D number that could be verified with a simple phone call. But prejudice made him blind to evidence, dismissing everything as elaborate props in what he believed was an expensive con game. "These fake medical documents are pretty convincing," Martinez said, holding up a prescription pad with the condescending tone of someone who'd already decided guilt based on racial assumptions. "Whoever set up this scam put a lot of effort into the details. Too bad it won't hold up in court when the real owner of this car comes forward." The prescription pad was absolutely real, issued by the Drug Enforcement Administration after extensive background checks and verification of medical credentials. Dr. Thompson's deregistration number, printed clearly at the top, could be verified within minutes through official databases. His medical license, active and spotless, was a matter of public record accessible to anyone with internet access. But Martinez had already decided guilt based on racial assumptions that made him dangerous to every citizen he encountered. Nurse Williams approached again, this time carrying Dr. Thompson's hospital badge photo from the staff directory, a laminated identification that showed his professional credentials and administrative responsibilities. "Officer Martinez, look at this picture. This is the same man you're arresting. He's been our chief of surgery for 8 years. Martinez barely glanced at the photo, his prejudice creating tunnel vision that prevented him from processing evidence that contradicted his assumptions. "Ma'am, anyone can fake an ID. Professional forgeries are common in organized crime. I need proof of vehicle ownership and legitimate employment, not some picture that could have been photoshopped last week. Inside the trauma bay, the patient's heart stopped for the second time, the flat line on the monitor representing not just medical crisis but the failure of systemic prejudice that put ego above human life. Dr. Chen's surgical skills were exceptional by any measure, but not adequate for this level of trauma. The internal bleeding required microsurgical techniques that only Dr. Thompson had mastered through years of specialized training and practice. "Officer, that patient is dying," Dr. Thompson said, his voice carrying the urgency that made medical students jump into action and nurses drop everything to assist. "Every second you delay this arrest is a second closer to losing a young man's life. Every moment of your prejudice is a moment stolen from someone's son, someone's future, someone's dreams." "Not my problem," Martinez replied with chilling indifference, producing handcuffs with the casual authority of someone who never faced consequences for his actions. "My job is law enforcement, not whatever sob story you're trying to sell. If someone dies because of your criminal activity, that's on you, not me." Hospital Security Chief David Rodriguez approached the scene, his 15 years of hospital experience telling him this situation was spinning dangerously out of control. "Officer Martinez, I can personally vouch for Dr. Thompson's identity. He's been our chief of surgery for 8 years. I've worked with him personally on dozens of cases." Hospital security, Martinez laughed with derision that echoed across the parking lot. "You're probably in on whatever scam this is. Step back or you'll be arrested for obstruction of justice. I don't need character witnesses for a car thief." The trauma patient's mother, Rosa Martinez, pushed through the hospital doors with the desperation of someone whose world was collapsing. Her son was dying upstairs, and she'd heard that the best surgeon was being arrested in the parking lot. The irony hit her like a physical blow. Her son might die because an officer who shared her last name was letting prejudice override common sense. "Please," she screamed at Officer Martinez, her voice carrying the anguish of every parent who'd ever faced losing a child. "That doctor is the only one who can save my son. Please let him go. My boy is dying." Martinez turned to face her, his expression showing the first crack of uncertainty since the encounter began. "Ma'am, this man is a car thief. He's not a doctor. He's lying to you just like he lied to me." Rosa pulled out her phone with trembling fingers, showing Martinez the news article from 6 months ago that had made Dr. Thompson famous throughout the region. "Look, Dr. Marcus Thompson, chief of surgery, saved 30 lives during the hospital shooting. This is him. This is the man who's going to save my boy." The news article was clear and unambiguous, featuring Dr. Thompson's photo, his credentials, his heroic actions during the mass casualty event that had tested every medical professional in the region. But Martinez had committed to his course of action, and backing down now would mean admitting his mistake, acknowledging his prejudice, accepting responsibility for nearly causing a preventable death. Inside the hospital, Dr. Chen made a desperate decision that violated protocol but might save a life. She called Dr. Thompson's mentor, retired surgeon Dr. Elizabeth Warren, pulling her out of bed for an emergency consultation over speakerphone that broadcast across the trauma bay. "Elizabeth, it's Sarah Chen at Memorial," she said, her voice breaking with stress and exhaustion. "I have a 19-year-old male, GSW to the chest, massive internal bleeding. I need Marcus, but he's being arrested in the parking lot by a police officer who thinks he stole his car." Dr. Warren's voice crackled through the speaker with the authority of 40 years in surgery and 20 years training the best doctors in the country. "Arrested, Marcus Thompson, that's impossible. He's the most respected surgeon on the West Coast. What kind of officer would arrest someone in medical scrubs outside a hospital?" The patient's blood pressure dropped to critical levels that made the monitors alarm with piercing urgency. Without Dr. Thompson's surgical expertise, the young man had perhaps 5 minutes before irreversible brain damage, 10 minutes before death, and a lifetime of what-ifs for his family. Officer Martinez's radio crackled with a transmission that would change everything, though he didn't know it yet. "All units be advised, Memorial Hospital reports Dr. Marcus Thompson missing from emergency surgery. Patient critical condition, all patrol units should assist with locating the missing physician immediately." Martinez froze, his hand halfway to the handcuffs as the dispatcher's words penetrated his prejudice-clouded judgment. The description matched perfectly with disturbing precision. African-American male, 35 years old, approximately 6'2", last seen wearing surgical scrubs, driving a white Mercedes S-Class, license plate MDSAV1. Dispatch, this is Unit 24, Martinez said slowly, his voice betraying the first hint of doubt since the encounter began. Can you provide more detailed information on the missing physician? What does he look like? Unit 24, Dr. Thompson is Chief of Cardiothoracic Surgery, currently needed for life-saving surgery on a gunshot victim. Patient has approximately 8 minutes before situation becomes fatal. Dr. Thompson is described as African-American, tall, thin build, wearing surgical scrubs, extremely professional demeanor. The pieces clicked into place with the horrifying clarity of someone realizing they'd made a catastrophic mistake. The confident demeanor that came from years of saving lives. The medical terminology used with natural precision. The hospital staff running to his defense. The expensive car that represented success earned through years of sacrifice and study. Dr. Thompson watched the realization dawn on Martinez's face, seeing the exact moment when prejudice collided with reality and lost. Officer, that's my patient dying upstairs. Every second counts in trauma surgery. Every moment you've wasted on this arrest is a moment stolen from a young man's life. Martinez's hands shook as he reached for the handcuff keys. 8 years of police work finally confronted with the reality that his prejudices had nearly caused a preventable death. A man was dying because Martinez had seen a successful black professional and assumed criminality instead of achievement. Dr. Thompson, Martinez whispered, his voice breaking with the weight of understanding what he'd almost done. I'm sorry, I assumed ... Officer Martinez, Dr. Thompson interrupted, already moving toward the hospital doors with the efficiency of someone who'd spent years responding to medical emergencies. Apologies later, life first, we can discuss your assumptions after I save that patient. The trauma bay doors burst open as Dr. Thompson rushed in, still wearing one handcuff on his left wrist, the metal catching the fluorescent lights as a reminder of injustice interrupted by urgency. His surgical team had never been happier to see anyone in their entire careers, their relief visible despite the ongoing crisis. Get me scrubbed and gowned immediately, Dr. Thompson commanded, his voice returning to the authority that saved lives daily, coordinated complex procedures, and turned medical residents into skilled surgeons. What's his current status? How long has he been down? Blood pressure 60/40. Massive internal bleeding. We've lost him twice and brought him back, Dr. Chen reported, her relief evident despite the crisis that still threatened to claim a young life. Estimated blood loss 3 liters, possible cardiac tamponade, definitely needs immediate surgical intervention. Martinez stood in the doorway, watching the man he'd humiliated and nearly arrested transform into a life-saving surgeon whose every movement radiated competence and authority. The handcuffs still dangled from Dr. Thompson's left wrist as he worked with precision and skill that left everyone in the trauma bay in awe of his abilities. The surgery took for grueling hours that tested every skill Dr. Thompson had developed over 15 years of training and practice. His hands moved with the confidence of someone who'd performed thousands of similar operations, each precise cut and suture bringing the patient closer to survival and farther from the death that had seemed inevitable. At 4:17 a.m., the patient's vital signs stabilized for the first time since the shooting, the steady beep of the heart monitor providing the most beautiful sound anyone in the trauma bay had ever heard. The young man would live, would recover, would graduate from college and become the engineer he'd dreamed of being. Officer Martinez waited in the hallway, his career hanging in the balance as word spread through the police department. The officer who'd arrested a world-renowned surgeon. The officer who'd nearly caused a preventable death through racial profiling. The officer whose prejudice had almost made him a killer. Dr. Thompson emerged from surgery at dawn, exhaustion written across his face but satisfaction in his eyes that came from another life saved, another family kept whole, another victory over death itself. He found Martinez sitting on a waiting room chair, his head in his hands, his uniform wrinkled from hours of shame and regret. Officer Martinez, Dr. Thompson said quietly, his voice carrying none of the anger that anyone would have expected after such an encounter. You wanted to see me. Martinez looked up, his eyes red with shame and sleepless regret that would follow him for the rest of his career. Dr. Thompson, there's nothing I can say. I nearly killed that boy because I assumed. Because I saw a successful black man and thought criminal instead of doctor. Because you assumed a young black man couldn't legitimately own an expensive car, Dr. Thompson finished with surgical precision. Because you saw scrubs and thought costume, saw success and assumed theft, saw achievement and suspected crime. Because your training taught you to see criminals in certain demographics. The weight of truth hung between them like surgical smoke, thick with implications that would affect both their careers and countless future encounters between police and citizens. Martinez had been taught to see criminals in certain demographics, to suspect prosperity among people of color, to question success that didn't match his preconceived notions about who deserved what in America. Doctor, I'll resign, I'll face whatever charges you want to press. I'll accept whatever consequences come from my actions, Martinez said, his voice barely above a whisper. I have no excuse for what I did, no justification for nearly causing a death through my prejudice. Dr. Thompson sat down beside Martinez, his medical training reminding him that healing required understanding the disease before treating the symptoms, that long-term recovery demanded addressing root causes rather than just managing symptoms. Officer Martinez, do you know why I became a surgeon? Martinez shook his head, afraid to speak, afraid to assume anything else about this man whose dignity he'd attacked and whose profession he'd insulted. My father was a janitor at this hospital, 30 years of cleaning operating rooms, watching surgeons save lives, mopping up blood while doctors got the glory, Dr. Thompson said, his voice carrying the weight of generational struggle and determination. He told me every day, son, they see a black man with a mop. You make them see a black man with a scalpel. The lesson hit Martinez like a physical blow, the truth of systemic racism and individual excellence colliding in a way that made his assumptions seem not just wrong but evil. Dr. Thompson's success hadn't been given or stolen or awarded through affirmative action. It had been earned through years of struggle, study, and determination to overcome exactly the kind of prejudice Martinez had demonstrated. Your father was right, Martinez whispered, understanding for the first time how his assumptions had been shaped by generations of racial bias disguised as common sense. And I was wrong about everything, about you, about success, about what a doctor looks like. Dr. Thompson reached into his pocket, producing a business card that identified him as chairman of the Hospital Ethics Committee, a position that reviewed cases of bias in healthcare, situations where prejudice impacted patient care and professional relationships. Officer Martinez, I'm going to make you an offer that might surprise you. Martinez took the card, confusion replacing shame on his face as he tried to understand why this man was offering anything except prosecution and punishment. I'm going to give you a choice, Dr. Thompson continued, his voice carrying the same calm authority he used when presenting treatment options to patients and families. You can resign in disgrace, face criminal charges for civil rights violations, and let this incident destroy your career and everything you've worked for. The first option terrified Martinez, but he understood it was what he deserved after nearly causing a preventable death through his prejudice and assumptions. Or, Dr. Thompson continued, you can help me prevent other officers from making the same mistake. You can become part of the solution instead of continuing to be part of the problem. The proposal surprised Martinez more than anything that had happened during this long, horrible night. After everything he'd done, all the humiliation he'd caused, all the danger he'd created, Dr. Thompson was offering redemption instead of revenge. What would that involve? Martinez asked, hardly daring to believe that such an opportunity could exist after his catastrophic failure of judgment and basic human decency. Testifying about unconscious bias in law enforcement. Speaking at police academies about tonight's incident. Helping develop training programs that prevent racial profiling. Becoming a voice for change instead of a symbol of everything that's wrong with policing in America. Martinez felt the weight of choice settling on his shoulders like a heavy coat. His career could end in scandal and disgrace, destroying everything he'd worked for and leaving his family financially devastated. Or it could transform into something meaningful, educational, redemptive, a second chance to serve and protect in a way that actually protected everyone. Dr. Thompson, after what I did to you, to that patient, to every principle of justice and equality, why would you give me this chance? Why would you offer redemption to someone who nearly destroyed everything through prejudice? Dr. Thompson smiled with the same expression he used when delivering good news to families who'd been preparing for the worst possible outcomes. Officer Martinez, healing requires understanding the disease before treating the symptoms. Your prejudice nearly killed my patient tonight. But your testimony could save thousands of others from facing the same assumptions, the same delays, the same dangerous encounters. The mathematics that had driven Martinez's assumptions, young black man plus expensive car equals theft, transformed into a different equation that offered hope instead of division. Individual accountability plus systematic education equals lasting change. Personal transformation plus institutional reform equals justice. I accept, Martinez said, understanding that his lowest moment could become his most meaningful contribution to society, his greatest failure transformed into his most important success. Dr. Thompson stood, extending his hand with the dignity that had carried him through years of medical training, surgical residency, and encounters with prejudice that would have broken weaker men. Then let's begin the healing process, Officer Martinez. Let's turn this tragedy into education, this failure into growth, this ending into a new beginning. 6 months later, Officer Martinez completed his voluntary bias training program, becoming the first law enforcement officer in the state to publicly testify about his own misconduct, his own prejudices, his own dangerous assumptions. His emotional testimony helped pass comprehensive legislation requiring cultural competency training for all police officers statewide. I saw a successful black man and assumed criminality, Martinez told lawmakers, his voice steady despite the weight of public confession and professional humiliation. I nearly caused a preventable death because of prejudices I didn't even know I carried, assumptions I'd never examined, biases that made me dangerous to the very community I'd sworn to protect. Dr. Thompson established the Community Healing Initiative, bringing together medical professionals and law enforcement officers for comprehensive bias awareness training that addressed both conscious and unconscious prejudices. The program expanded to 12 states within 2 years, preventing countless incidents through education, accountability, and genuine understanding between communities and police. The patient, 19-year-old Miguel Santos, graduated with highest honors in engineering, his near-death experience motivating him to excel in ways he'd never imagined possible. He credits Dr. Thompson with saving not just his life, but his faith in human decency and the possibility of justice in America. At graduation, he announced his intention to become a trauma surgeon specializing in violence prevention. Rosa Martinez, the patient's mother, became a powerful advocate for police reform and medical accessibility, her son's near-death experience transforming her from a quiet factory worker into a respected voice for justice and accountability. Her testimony before City Council helped establish civilian oversight boards for police departments throughout the region. Hospital Administrator Johnson implemented comprehensive new protocols ensuring medical staff could be quickly identified during emergencies, preventing any surgeon from ever again facing arrest while trying to save lives. The policy became a model for hospitals nationwide, protecting medical professionals and patients alike. The white Mercedes still sits in Dr. Thompson's reserved parking spot each night after surgery, its license plate MD-Save-1 serving as a daily reminder that success belongs to those who earn it, regardless of race, assumptions, or the prejudices of others. The car represents not just personal achievement, but the possibility of excellence overcoming adversity. Every evening when Dr. Thompson walks to his car after another day of saving lives, he remembers that November night when prejudice almost prevented him from doing what he was born to do. 3 years after the incident, Officer Martinez retired from active duty but continued his work as a police training specialist, traveling across the country to share his story of transformation. His presentations, titled The Night I Almost Became a Killer Through Prejudice, have been viewed by over 50,000 law enforcement officers. His honest account of that evening continues to challenge assumptions and save lives by preventing similar encounters. Dr. Thompson was promoted to chief medical officer of the entire hospital system, becoming the youngest person ever to hold such a position. His leadership during the COVID-19 pandemic saved thousands of lives, but he never forgot the lesson learned in that parking lot, that healing extends beyond the operating room into the community itself. Miguel Santos, the patient whose life hung in the balance that night, completed his engineering degree and returned to Memorial Hospital as a biomedical engineer. He designed new emergency response systems that ensure medical personnel can be immediately identified during crises. His innovations have been implemented in hospitals nationwide, preventing any doctor from facing the delays that almost cost him his life. The community healing initiative established by Dr. Thompson now operates in 47 states, training over 25,000 police officers annually in bias recognition and cultural competency. The program's success has led to a 67% reduction in racial profiling incidents in participating departments, proving that education can indeed transform hearts and minds. Mrs. Rosa Martinez became a certified conflict resolution specialist, using her experience to help other families navigate the intersection of medical emergencies and law enforcement encounters. Her workshop, When Crisis Meets Prejudice, has helped hundreds of families understand their rights and advocate for proper treatment during medical emergencies. The hospital parking lot where it all began now features a memorial plaque dedicated to the power of second chances, installed jointly by the hospital administration and the police department. The plaque serves as a reminder that transformation is possible, that prejudice can be overcome, and that justice delayed is not always justice denied. Every year on the anniversary of that November night, Dr. Thompson and Officer Martinez meet for coffee at the hospital cafeteria. They discuss progress made, challenges remaining, and the ongoing work of building bridges between communities that have been divided by generations of mistrust and misunderstanding. Dr. Thompson's father, the janitor who cleaned those operating rooms for 30 years, lived to see his son receive the Presidential Medal of Freedom for his contributions to medical excellence and social justice. At the ceremony, Dr. Thompson quoted his father's words, "They saw a black man with a mop. You made them see a black man with a scalpel. Now help them see a black man with the power to heal not just bodies, but society itself." The ripple effects of that single encounter continue to spread across the nation. Police departments have revised their training protocols. Hospitals have implemented bias recognition programs. Communities have started conversations about assumptions, privilege, and the courage required to examine our own prejudices. Officer Martinez's children now attend schools where Dr. Thompson speaks annually about the importance of character over color, evidence over assumption, healing over hatred. They understand that their father's greatest professional failure became his most important contribution to justice and equality. The story of that November night has been featured in documentaries, studied in police academies, and referenced in Supreme Court decisions about civil rights and law enforcement accountability. It has become a touchstone for discussions about racial bias, professional excellence, and the possibility of redemption through honest self-examination. But perhaps the most powerful legacy of that encounter is found in the lives it continues to save. Every police officer who chooses understanding over assumption, every citizen who refuses to judge by appearance alone, every community that builds bridges instead of walls, they all carry forward the lesson learned in a hospital parking lot when prejudice met professionalism and lost. The lesson remains clear and urgent: when we judge people by appearance rather than character, by assumptions rather than evidence, by prejudice rather than truth, we risk losing everything that makes us human. Dr. Thompson chose healing over hatred, education over anger, transformation over revenge, choices that saved not just one life but countless future lives. Today, as you witness injustice or face your own assumptions about others, remember Dr. Thompson's example. Choose courage over comfort. Choose growth over grudges. Choose the harder path of understanding over the easier road of prejudice. Your choice in that moment might save a life, change a career, or transform a community. Your voice matters in this ongoing fight against prejudice and injustice. Share your stories of overcoming bias in the comments below. Have you witnessed discrimination in your community? How did you respond? What changes do you want to see? Have you ever had to confront your own assumptions about others? Subscribe to Black Voices Speak for more stories of resilience, justice, and the quiet courage that heals our divided world. Hit that notification bell because every story shared brings us closer to a society where character truly matters more than color, where success is celebrated rather than suspected, where achievement is recognized rather than questioned. Together, we can ensure that the next generation inherits a world where Black excellence is celebrated rather than criminalized, where success is earned recognition rather than grounds for suspicion, where doctors can save lives without first having to prove their humanity, where police officers protect and serve all citizens with equal dignity and respect. Justice achieved through education is justice that endures. Healing happens one changed heart, one transformed mind, one courageous conversation at a time. The story that began with prejudice in a parking lot continues to unfold in every choice we make, every assumption we challenge, every bridge we build between divided communities. This is how change happens, not through grand gestures or political speeches, but through individual moments of courage when people choose to see beyond their assumptions and recognize the humanity in everyone they encounter. Dr. Thompson and Officer Martinez proved that even our worst failures can become our greatest contributions to justice, one transformed heart at a time. 5 years later, the impact of that November night continues to ripple through society in ways neither man could have imagined. The story has been translated into 12 languages and is required reading in police academies across 3 continents. International law enforcement agencies have adopted the training protocols developed from their encounter, preventing countless incidents of racial profiling worldwide. Dr. Thompson's surgical techniques, developed during those intense hours saving Miguel Santos, have been refined into the Thompson Protocol for treating complex trauma cases. This medical innovation has saved over 10,000 lives globally, proving that excellence born from adversity can benefit humanity far beyond the original crisis that sparked it. The Mercedes that started it all was eventually donated to the Police Training Academy, where it sits in the lobby as part of an interactive exhibit called Challenging Assumptions. Thousands of cadets have sat in that driver's seat, learning to see beyond their initial judgments and understand the human cost of prejudice. The license plate MD-Save-1 has become a symbol of achievement earned through merit rather than granted through privilege. Officer Martinez's transformation inspired a new generation of law enforcement professionals who understand that true courage means confronting your own biases rather than just confronting criminals. His autobiography, The Night I Nearly Became a Killer, became a bestseller, with all proceeds funding scholarships for minority students pursuing careers in law enforcement and medicine. Dr. Thompson established the Thompson Foundation for Medical Excellence, which has provided full scholarships to over 500 medical students from underrepresented communities. These new doctors carry forward his legacy of excellence, proving every day that talent and dedication transcend racial boundaries. Many of these scholarship recipients have themselves become chiefs of surgery, department heads, and medical innovators. The hospital where it all began now hosts an annual conference called Healing Beyond Medicine, bringing together healthcare professionals, law enforcement officers, community leaders, and social justice advocates. The conference consistently sells out, with waiting lists stretching months in advance. Attendees leave with concrete tools for addressing bias in their own institutions and communities. Miguel Santos's biomedical innovations have revolutionized emergency response systems in hospitals across the nation. His Santos Alert system ensures that critical medical personnel can be immediately identified and contacted during emergencies, preventing any delay like the one that nearly cost him his life. The system has been credited with saving over 3,000 lives in its first 3 years of implementation. Rosa Martinez's conflict resolution work expanded into a national nonprofit organization called Bridges Over Bias, which trains community mediators to handle situations where racial prejudice intersects with essential services. Her workshops have prevented hundreds of similar encounters between citizens and law enforcement, emergency responders, and healthcare providers. The parking lot memorial has become an unexpected pilgrimage site for people seeking inspiration in their own struggles against prejudice and injustice. Visitors leave flowers, notes of encouragement, and personal stories of transformation. The memorial guest book contains thousands of entries from people whose lives were changed by reading about that November night. Dr. Thompson's children, now teenagers, volunteer at the Community Healing Initiative, teaching younger students about bias recognition and the importance of judging people by their character rather than their appearance. They understand that their father's experience was both deeply personal and universally significant, and they carry that responsibility with grace and determination. Officer Martinez's former colleagues initially ostracized him for admitting his mistakes so publicly, but over time, many came to respect his courage in facing uncomfortable truths about policing and racial bias. Several officers have followed his example, sharing their own stories of bias and transformation, creating a movement of accountability within law enforcement that continues to grow. The story has inspired legislative changes at the federal level, including the Martinez-Thompson Act, which mandates bias training for all federal law enforcement agencies and provides funding for community healing initiatives in districts with high rates of racial profiling incidents. The act passed with bipartisan support, proving that personal transformation can indeed lead to systemic change. Medical schools nationwide now include courses on bias in healthcare as part of their core curriculum, using Dr. Thompson's experience as a case study in how prejudice can affect even the most educated professionals. Future doctors learn not just how to treat medical conditions, but how to recognize and address the social conditions that contribute to health disparities. The annual coffee meetings between Dr. Thompson and Officer Martinez have evolved into public conversations held at universities, community centers, and professional conferences. These dialogues, called Conversations for Change, provide a model for how former adversaries can become allies in the fight for justice and understanding. 10 years after that night, Dr. Thompson was invited to deliver the keynote address at the FBI National Academy's graduation ceremony. Standing before 250 law enforcement leaders from around the world, he spoke about the night his life intersected with Officer Martinez's prejudice and how that encounter became a catalyst for global change in policing practices. Officer Martinez, now a nationally recognized expert on bias in law enforcement, received the Presidential Award for Public Service for his contributions to police reform. At the ceremony, he credited Dr. Thompson with saving not just one life that night, but thousands of lives through the changes their encounter inspired. The touching stories that emerged from their experience have been featured in documentaries that won Academy Awards, inspired Broadway plays that ran for years, and became the subject of university dissertations that advance our understanding of prejudice, redemption, and social transformation. Their story has become a powerful tool for teaching empathy and challenging assumptions across multiple disciplines. But perhaps the most profound legacy of that November night is found in the quiet moments when individuals choose differently because they remember Dr. Thompson and Officer Martinez's example. Every time a police officer pauses to examine their assumptions, every time a citizen challenges their own biases, every time someone chooses understanding over judgment, the healing that began in a hospital parking lot continues to spread. The ripple effects reach into classrooms where teachers learn to recognize their biases toward students of color. They influence hospital administrators who implement policies ensuring equal treatment for all patients. They touch corporate boardrooms where executives examine their hiring practices and promotion decisions. They inspire faith leaders who preach about seeing the divine in every person, regardless of race or social status. Dr. Thompson often says that the handcuffs Officer Martinez placed on his wrist that night became the key that unlocked a national conversation about race, prejudice, and the possibility of redemption. Those same handcuffs now sit in the Smithsonian Museum of American History as part of an exhibit on civil rights in the 21st century, representing both the persistence of prejudice and the power of personal transformation. The story continues to unfold in countless lives touched by their example. Police officers who choose de-escalation over confrontation. Doctors who examine their own biases in patient care. Citizens who speak up when they witness discrimination. Community leaders who build bridges instead of walls. Each of these choices carries forward the lesson learned when prejudice met professionalism in a hospital parking lot and transformation won. As you reflect on this story, consider your own moments of choice. When have you been challenged to examine your assumptions? When have you had the opportunity to choose understanding over judgment, growth over comfort, courage over convenience? The next time you face such a moment, remember that your choice might be the catalyst for transformation in someone else's life, just as Officer Martinez's choice to accept accountability became the beginning of his redemption. The story that began with a traffic stop motivated by prejudice has become a testament to the human capacity for growth, change, and healing. It proves that our worst moments don't have to define us if we have the courage to learn from them, grow beyond them, and use them to serve others. Dr. Thompson and Officer Martinez transformed a moment of injustice into a lifetime of service, showing us all that redemption is possible when we choose accountability over defensiveness, education over ignorance, and love over fear. This is the power of authentic storytelling, to transform not just individual lives but entire communities, institutions, and societies. Every time their story is shared, every time someone chooses differently because of their example, every time prejudice is challenged and overcome, the healing that began on that November night continues to spread across our divided world, one changed heart at a time.